Hello and welcome to Focus on Liberia. Welcome to this late night edition of the Hour of Politics with me, Anthony Sear, your host. In today's edition, we have a gentleman here comfortably seated, getting ready, putting papers together. He is here on a mission. A couple of days ago, I had a show here on what I describe as the Boakai's final budget. That is the 2016-2017 budget for Vice President Joseph Human Boakai. In that show, I lay out how allotment to Joseph Human Boakai are completely out of control. But Josh was not happy with my presentation and how I provided my interpretation and explanations. So he's here to set the record straight. That is why we are here. So the discussion will be on the 2016-2017 budget, especially on the office of the Vice President, Ambassador Joseph Yuma Boakai Sr. At this time, let me welcome George Preston Lobbo. Mr. Lobbo, welcome to the Hour of Politics. Welcome to Focus on Liberia. I'm happy to have you, sir.
Thank you very much, Anthony. It's a privilege, and I'm glad to be here this afternoon to engage you in this fruitful dialogue.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so very much. And, it is good that we have this kind of conversation so that the listeners can get nothing but the facts. Folks, in the 2016-2017 budget, there are allotments in that budget for the vice president that I classify as legal corruption, and I don't miss my words. For example, basic salary for Ambassador Joseph Human Boakai was $109,000. Then allowance, special allowance, $215,000. General allowance, $524,000. And then foreign travel, means of travel, $113,000. Foreign travel daily assistant, US $112,000. Foreign travel incidental allowance 50, and the list goes on, and we will be bringing these figures. When I look at these figures, I said to myself, wait a minute. And before George can come in, what prompted me to have done this show? Quite recently, Mr. Joseph Human Boakai had the opportunity to speak to the Liberian people, and during that interview, he said for the first 6 years of the administration, he made $5,000. So the thing that popped up my mind, why he chose to only talk about the first 6 years. What happened to the remaining 6 years? And I wanted to know whether he was actually telling the truth. And so I did my presentation on what I had termed as the final budget. Mr. Lobbo is here to respond. Again, Mr. Lobbo is also, let me get your opening statement. You heard me in my explanation. I felt that the budget of the vice president did not actually represent the man he's being projected to be in the Liberian governance space. Your response.
First and foremost, let me say thank you very much for the opportunity to be here once again. I want to thank our viewers and Liberians in the cyberspace for tuning in. Mm-hmm. You know, I listened to your opening statement, which I will say, because of my commitment to the respect of everyone's opinion and the respect of freedom of expression, I will not critique your statements. But the reason why I'm here today is because I strongly believe that the allegation leveled against the former vice president wrong, completely out of line, far from the truth. And as a matter of fact, I'm glad that you will be pointing out numbers like you stated, and so we can be able to talk about those numbers in actuality, what it meant. And spare me, because with me here, what I didn't do today is to print out the budget that you sent me. So in my hand, what I have here, as you can see, I'm using the 2018-2019 budget. And the reason why I'm using it, if you look here, it gives you the previous year. So it would say actual, the actual 2016-2017 fiscal year. It just break it down into sub, and we can look at the basic numbers. So the very first thing, the numbers we talk about in terms of basic salaries, allowances, and things like that. But I'll be glad for this conversation. But I just wanted to say, first and foremost, Anthony, when I heard the previous show you've had about the vice president budget, a few things run to mind. Any rational, normal Liberian would say, but why the vice president? The vice president office. Why? We currently have a government in power that came in as a result of coming in to transform the country. We all must not forget, many Liberians said that the Unity Party government was wasteful, and as a result of that, they usher in a new government, which was supposed to do the best, which was supposed to cut down wasteful spending, as stated in the agenda, which I have here. And today, what I will also be doing, because some of the previous show you've had, you stated that Ambassador Joseph Newman Boakai, who was the vice president in the Unity Party-led government with Madam Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, you believe that the money was just wasteful, they didn't yield no results. So what I'm also going to be doing is, I don't know how informed you are, but I would love if you have this. This is, let me bring it to the light so that people can see. This is the World Bank report on Liberia. I will give you the report number. So I will read some things here today for the Liberian people, because this perception about the Unity Party government did nothing. I want the conversation to be driven on hardcore facts, not just opinion, because for too long we've given opinions, we've mischaracterized people, we've tarnished people's reputation. I think our international partners and those who supported the government, we should be able to use the IMF, the World Bank, report on our country as it relates to progress. That way we'll be able to determine if Ambassador Boakai and the Unity Party government was fruitful or not. And that is why I took this time to be here today. So I'm looking forward to this discussion. But once again, I want to say your opinion is highly respected, because I believe in the freedom of expression as is guaranteed under every constitution. But I will say this very, very clear. Ambassador Joseph Newman Boakai is a very decent man, very honest man. One good thing, I've listened to all your shows. You've not been able to point out any scandal of corruption which he was found guilty of. And on that basis, I'm here to discuss this budget.
Thank you so very much for your opening statement. And in order for us to begin the conversation, I want to restate that I believe the Unity Party government was one of the most wasteful government ever recorded in the pages of Liberia's history. They were able to raise significant revenue, and in my opinion, they wasted most of the money on officials and things they should not have even spent money on. And that was the essence of my presentation. But Mr. Lobbo, let's get started here quickly. My first question to you, the 2016-2017 budget, are you aware that Mr. Joseph Newman Boakai, Vice President, Republic of Liberia then, did sign the budget? Are you aware of that?
First and foremost, Anthony, I think that question itself should answer itself. Ambassador Boakai is the vice president. I don't know how aware are you as it relates to the budgetary proceedings. The executive submit the budget to the legislature, which the legislature will go through it. The legislature is the one that makes appropriations, and once that is completed, it's sent back to the president for approval. If I can recall, the reason why the 2017-2018 budget was not passed into law, it was not because Ambassador Boakai didn't sign the budget. It was because former President Ellen Johnson didn't sign the budget. So I'm confused today to hear you asking me if the vice president is the one who signs the budget. I don't know where in the Public Financial Management Act that states that. Maybe you can educate me, but as far as I'm concerned, yes, it is true. The vice president was in the government. He should have an idea of the budget, but that does not mean he signs the budget. There's nowhere that I know in the law, according to Article 51, that clearly stipulates the vice president's function, and signing of the budget is one of those. So I differ with you on that. But I look forward to the education because his office will have submitted its own appropriations in the budget as a result. And not forget, Ambassador Joseph Nyuma Boakai is the vice president, and he's also the president of the Senate. So yeah, he does have representation as it relates to the budget. He should have a knowledge of it.
Thank you. So this is the 2016-2017 budget. The signature you're looking at right here is the president of the Republic of Liberia. The president signed, and this is the chief clerk. The chief clerk signed. This is the secretary of the Senate. The secretary of the Senate signed. And this is the signature of the vice president of the Republic of Liberia, Ambassador Joseph Nyuma Boakai. He did sign this particular budget. So his signature to the budget, and I just wanted us
that his numbers in there is correct. Yes, that's what I mean by that.
Yeah, so
he does not have a final decision power on it. So go ahead.
Thank you so very much. So let's get to the numbers. And the core of my presentation, like I've just stated, was the Unity Party government was wasteful.
I got that.
Wasted money, exorbitant allowances to most government officials, and the vice president also having to be one of those officials of government. And I believe that was complete legalized corruption. So let's start with the first figure. In the 2016-2017 budget, the vice president was allotted this amount, $109,000. In your opinion, don't you see this amount as so exorbitant for the office of the vice president at the time for 12 months as just basic salary?
Give me the number again.
It's on the screen. Look on the screen. The number is on the screen right there.
Okay, you said 109,000. Beautiful. 109. Right, for 12 months.
For 12 months.
First and foremost, let me ask you, and I'm not supposed to do this for you, given the fact that you've done a very good job, according to you, as a result of understanding the entire budget. So I would like for us to just give our audience this education. What does the office of the vice president encompass? I want you to please tell the Liberian people what falls all under the office of the vice president. Then we can talk about his budget.
Mr. Lobbo, you are here for an interview to make clarification.
That's true, but
a presentation that I made. I don't think you're here to ask me questions. So please answer my question. Don't you think the amount of 109,000 just as basic salary for the office of the vice president is not too much for the vice president?
First and foremost, I say no, and I'll tell you why it's not too much. We must not forget the very first thing under the Unity Party government, Madam Ellen Johnson Sirleaf office budget was little under 15 million United States dollars. So the office of the vice president budget, which was under $2.1 million, at most $2.2 million. You see, Anthony, one thing you need to understand how these allotments were made. I'm glad you brought us something. First thing I want to dispel from your conversation today, and I hope moving forward you will desist from propagating those lies against the Unity Party government. If you believe that the Unity Party government was wasteful, according to you, I hope you will take the time as well to be able to show some of the budgetary numbers of this current government, so the Liberian people will see what we mean by wasteful. Because if you say UP government was wasteful, I think it would be fair for us to look at these government numbers and look at the Unity Party government and let the Liberian people make that determination. As journalists and as members of the fourth estate, will be a more fair, comprehensive way of analyzing which government was more wasteful, which government was impactful. But let me get to this. So I hope we do that as well. But to answer your question, I say no. One thing you fail to realize, Anthony, say is that the office of the vice president, what I expected you to have done was to be able to tell the Liberian people how many people work in the office of the vice president. What was the staff numbers? How many people were there? And what were their salaries? Now, two things we have failed to understand here. When you begin your conversation, you talk about the vice president said his first 6 years, he made 5,000. Why he didn't talk about his second year? Anthony, let's be realistic here to our people. The Liberian national budget when the Unity Party came in was $18 million. Let's be honest.
George, can we just stick to this particular budget?
Anthony, you've had 3 different shows on this issue. So what I think
George,
you should do today, listen.
Can we just stick to this 2016-2017 budget?
Your job is to ask me the question. Let the Liberian people make the determination.
And my job is also to control the discussion based on what we have discussed. The topic here is the 2016-2017 budget.
Based on how you want to present the numbers. So I want to give the people, I want to contextualize the conversation so they understand how the numbers arrive and what those numbers are allocated for. Because if you say $100, you need to be able to tell the Liberian people how many people work in the office of the vice president.
So, John, are you supposing that this 109,000? Are you supposing that this $109,000? The employees of the vice president were part of this particular basic salary?
But then you see, is of Anthony. Then you see, I think the conversation then it makes it clear to the Liberian people.
I'm asking you a question, Mr. Lobbo.
Anthony, you just said 109,000 basic salary for the office of the vice president. The office of the vice president is not just the vice president alone. So I hope you knew that before we had this conversation. So the fact that you don't
what I will not have you do is to deflect. This particular basic salary was for the vice president.
No, that's not
this
what
was his allotment.
Office, point of correction.
This is the allotment of the vice president.
Very well. Do you know how many staffs are in the office of the vice president?
And that's where you are missing it. I'm not saying the office, but this is for the vice president.
Anthony, you've had your chance. I think you should let me speak.
No, but I want to provide clarity, George. I'm saying to you, Anthony, this basic salary was not for the office of the vice president, Anthony, but it was allotted for the vice president. So
but then let's go to the allocation. Put a number there. What does it say? It says where? It says say the office of the vice president or the vice president's salary. Let's look at the number now. You have the budget.
I have made my point. This is for the vice president.
I'm not going to speak. I want the Liberian people. Listen, Anthony. I came here purposely to be able to look at the facts and let's be realistic. So what I want you to do in every minister, president, vice president office, there are core of officials that falls under that office. So one of the reasons why you see I gave you the chance for over 3 different shows to be able to do your homework.
No, George, you did not give me the chance. I will not allow you to say that. You don't give me chance on this show. This is my show.
Tell me that the office of the vice president, it is only Vice President Boakai that sit in the office.
And George, that is the lie. I will not allow you to propagate here. And allow me to state that again. Let me say that again. This is the basic salary for Joseph Yuman Boakai for the fiscal year 2016-2017. Did I make myself clear? I did not say his office, but I said for the vice president, not his office. So you can go and respond.
No, so let me be very clear. I would love for you to, you have the budget with you. Can you please post for the public so that they will know the facts? You got it when you publish it for them. Let's look at it. I want the Liberian people to see it. Please publish the budget itself. I don't want you to just put a number. Please publish the budget.
George, you have not answered my question.
No, I will not. No, I'm not going to allow you to let me just answer. And you say I'm lying. Publish the budget that you have. Let the Liberian people see for themselves. Why?
If you answer my question, then I will show it.
Okay.
My question to you, George, is, and we have a lot of things to go through, and you're wasting time here. No, I'm saying to you, this $109,000 was allotted for Joseph Yuman Boakai, not his office.
That's what I'm saying. Again, I'm going to be very, very clear here today. Anthony said, you've had this show 3 different times. If you want to have the 4th one today, then that's fine. But what I'm not going to do is to sit here and just answer yes or no.
I'm not telling you to
answer
yes
let me
no
finish.
question.
Hold on, let me finish. In the budget, the reason why you're refusing to show the budget, this is how the budget looks. What does it say? The office of the vice president. What does it say? Office of the vice president. Isn't that what the budget looks like? Isn't that what
Josh, Josh, yeah, the budget.
Isn't that what it should? No. Anthony, put the budget itself. What does this show in my hand here?
What do you see here? What do you see on the screen?
Anthony, so it is very clear. Now, under this, you see basic salary. Let me break it down. What does it say? Office of the vice president. So what the number say? Basic salary. So what? You must say who's been factored here then?
So Josh, look at what it say about compensation of employees. What does it say?
Let me show you. So the truth is, it is the office of the vice president. Do you agree with me? That is why
I disagree. That is not it.
So it's not the office. Okay, so the Liberian people will then move forward from there. So one thing I wanted for the Liberian people to know today, that compensation and basic salary encompassate the vice president himself and all the staffs that fall under the office of the vice president. So the fact of the matter here that Anthony C. have said something different, the Liberian people will make that determination. In my hand here, thank God, what you brought is 103. That is the same thing I have here, 103.
And it's on the screen, George. And
no, but just go down. Anthony, go back up. Let the Liberian people see the time of the budget.
I sure it. This is the office of the president, the vice president, right? You see that?
Office of the vice president. So Anthony said, you really believe that only the vice president himself is in his office? Is that what you're telling the Liberian people today?
I am telling you, George Lobbo, the 109 was allotted for the vice president for 12 months as his basic salary. So, George, this is where let me prove you wrong here, because what I will not allow you to do, my dear friend, is to deflect. So $109,000. If you divide it by 12, that is about 9,000. Are you telling me the entire office staff of the vice president for whole 12 months were taking home $109,000 in basic salary? Is that why you want me to believe that?
But you see, Anthony, I think, like I said, I've been listening to you on this show for multiple times, and I wanted to come here for us to have a fruitful conversation. But I gave you over 3 different times to go over these numbers because I wanted to make sure that if I came on here, we'll be able to have a fruitful conversation. Anthony said, you've had lengthy deliberation on this issue. I think what you should do now is to allow me to provide clarification to this issue. And if you believe that you interrupt me, you will stop me, and I don't know what you want me to say. But
George, start complaining. So here is the budget right here.
I came here to discuss
here is the budget here. It said compensation for employees. You see there? Compensation for 11, the 2016-2017 employee compensation is $848,928. Compensation for employees. And I told you, George,
so now 109. Go
ahead.
You see?
Go ahead,
George. Let me say something to you. Anthony said, you see, the very first thing, the reason why I'm giving you all this time to keep speaking is because I really came here today to provide clarification to this conversation. If you will let me to, fine. If you will not, I will leave it up to you. If you want to have a full session, then that's great. Let me say one thing to you first. During the Unity Party government, civil servants receive 2 forms of incentives. 1 was basic salary. 2 was their general allowances. Their basic salary was their civil servant component. The general allowances mostly were paid out in US dollars. That is a fact. So you will notice that every budget before the wage harmonization will carry basic salaries, and it will carry general allowances. One thing I've been very, very clear here is this, Anthony C. If your argument is that a sitting vice president of the Republic of Liberia, we all knew that prior to the wage harmonization, a representative and a senator was making more than $7,000. Just to give your argument substance and hold your 109, for example, right? If you did the math, like you said, it's $9,000. Are you saying to me today that while a representative was making $8,000 to $12,000, while the vice president made $9,000, that is outrageous? Are you being honest here today? Is that what you're saying to the Liberian people?
That is what I'm saying, that this particular figure, which is 100. Hold on. You asked me a question, right? I'm saying to you, and I continue to say it, and you don't want to, you want to
listening
deflect.
to you. Go ahead, because then the
So
argument, I
for
think,
now,
is easy. You made the argument easier for me
the
because
argument is not easy for you, George.
it's very easy, Anthony,
It's
because
not easy
listen,
because the vice president basis. No, except you want to tell me, and I know the numbers. I studied the numbers, George. I
so
did my
Anthony,
research.
now
If you
let's
did
go
not
over the
come
numbers. So
prepared,
let's say, okay, Anthony, as just said to you, I want to talk about a lot of different things you've been talking on. I'm going to proceed. And if we did this math, the vice president made 9,000. So any rational Liberian, I want you Liberians to listen to us today. When lawmakers were making 12, 13,000, using Anthony's CA number, the vice president made 9,000. Is that what we're saying? So that's fair. Granted.
that is what I'm saying
I
for
take
the
it. So
2016,
are
20.
you
And you
saying,
must understand now, George, that is
oh
not
God,
the only allowance for the vice, because you are trying to make it look here. The only allowance that
Anthony
the
said,
vice
what do you want
president,
me to do? This show is an hour, 30 minutes. Give me some time. You've had
and
your
George,
chance.
what I would not allow you to do is
But
to
then,
misrepresent the facts. This is my
what
show.
is the, so, what is
Because
the
you are
argument?
trying to give the impression that I'm saying that the vice president only make $9,000 a month in allowances, and that is
Okay,
a
I'll let you to
no.
speak. When you're done, I will speak uninterrupted. Go ahead. Let me
Go
hear
ahead.
you.
Go ahead.
Okay, so Anthony, I'm the guest. I think what you should do, you've had multiple shows on this subject. Allow
Stop
me.
talking about multiple show. That is my show. I can
Great.
have it anytime. I talk about
Okay,
what I
so
want to talk
listen
about
now,
anything.
Anthony,
Mhm.
give me the chance. Let me speak to the Liberian people. Let the public make a decision whether I'm being factual, whether I'm being wrong. That is not you. I'm your guest. Look, Anthony, you're my big brother. I want us to proceed with this conversation. I want to be real here with you. The fact of the matter, we know that during the Madam Salif time, during the Unity Party government, one thing you said, and I will hold you to it. You begin your show by saying the Unity Party government is the most wasteful government you know. And I hope the Liberian people who heard you and I, that you will be able to prove me wrong based on what we know so far. I'm hoping for that before the show ends. But give me the chance to proceed, please, Siambala. The audience want to hear some things you've said. So today I'm here to debunk some of those misrepresentation of the facts you've given. And please, I don't want, you want to speak, I will allow you to speak. When I want to speak, let me speak and let the public listen to us. That is how I want us to proceed. So if you want to speak now, you've spoken, I have not spoken, but if you still want to speak, I'm going to give you the chance and then I will respond. Go ahead.
George, go ahead and speak. You've been speaking, but you're saying you have not spoken, even though you've been speaking. Go ahead.
Okay, so Anthony said, I'm glad that Vice President Joseph Nyuma Boakai made $9,000. That was as his basic salary. Yeah. And let us be honest here, fellow Liberians. If a representative made over 12,000, that is being reported, which they all have spoken about, I think it's fair enough that a vice president of the republic, who has enormous amount of responsibility, who was traveling the entire country, I think $9,000 as basic salary, for me, I don't find that as outrageous. And let me be very clear here to all Liberians. We must not forget, when the Unity Party government came in, the government made progress. The government expanded the economy. The government took our budget from 80 million to that of $530 million. I think that itself gave the government the ability to pay people for work. Anthony said, and I would say to all Liberians, the UP government goal was to tackle corruption. And one of the primary reasons, if you want to tackle corruption anywhere in the world, Anthony, the reason why people who work federal jobs in America gets paid is because pay the people well. So when they do wrong, you go after them. Because if you are well paid, you have no reason to steal. You have no reason to be corrupt. What I expected to hear from you here today was that Joseph Nyuma Boakai was paid this much money, but instead he stole this much money. He diverted public funds. In as much as that cannot be proven, and let me be very clear here on the record, as long as a budget is passed We had CDC government officials. I'm glad at that time, President George Weah was a senator in the House who voted for that budget. Current Vice President Joel Howard Taylor was
And you
also a
see,
senator.
George, I will hold you there, George, and you will hold, please. What I will not have you do, you and myself had a conversation to talk about the 2016-2017 budget. George, you have your platform and you always had the time to deal with the Weah government. I have used my platform also to hold the Weah government accountable, and you know where I stand. What I will not have you do in the discussion on the 2016-2017 budget is to be talking about Unity Party raise. Let us discuss the numbers in the budget for the vice president and the office of the vice president. Can we do that, Josh? That's the reason for this show.
You've already said before we started the show that you believe the Unity Party government was the most wasteful government. Currently, there's a government. So the fact of the matter, you're not willing for me to be able to compare the two governments to show the Liberian people who is wasteful. The Liberian people will make that determination for themselves. I will speak as much as I want to. You cannot tell me UP government was the most wasteful government when we currently do have a government and we have the government budget as well, and you tell me I can't say that. Then answer and say, are you being, I don't know if you've been fair to the Liberian people. I want to prove to the Liberian people that the UP government was not wasteful. Why wouldn't you want me to do that? Why is that a problem? You said the Unity Party government was wasteful. So what I want to do is we now have a government. Yes, this is the UP government numbers. This is the current government number. Who is wasteful? You don't want to do that. I don't know why wouldn't you want the Liberian people to know the truth? I don't see the problem with that. If we want to show that the UP government was wasteful, I think what we should be able to do for our people is to show them the Unity Party numbers that you are doing, and let's show them this government numbers and say, this is how much Boakai we're receiving in this area. This is what the CDC government vice president is receiving. Let's see who is wasteful. That would be the most fair way to balance this conversation. But if you want to, like I said, if I'm speaking and you stop me, then that's fine. I want to be very clear. I'm here today to speak about Ambassador Boakai. You cannot continue a campaign on tarnishing his reputation, and I show up here today with the expectation of providing clarity to that of his reputation, and you won't give me the chance. So if you want to continue the campaign of going down and misrepresenting his character,
George, all you do here is, I'm not giving you the chance, but I've been sitting here for
the good thing, this is why I brought this budget.
And I have the budget here, so let's discuss the budget.
Granted, let's proceed. All right.
So let me bring another figure.
And agree with you that the Unity Party government was the most wasteful government when we currently do have a government that is far more wasteful. So are you being fair to our people? That's my thing. Why is it a problem?
George,
so let's proceed.
Yeah, let's proceed. So we done with the basic salary, and I stated to you the 109 was for Mr. Boakai and not his office. And that meant that he was taking home around $9,000 for basic salary monthly. That is my position. That is my understanding. Now, on top of that, Mr. Boakai, it was being budgeted for him special allowance, $215,000. Your response. And you can go ahead and compare the CDC government or the government, any government you wish to compare, that's fine. Go ahead.
Beautiful. So, fellow Liberians, I want to be very factual here today when I speak. Anthony said talk about general allowances. And one thing I brought here was the summarized version of the budget, because I just didn't want to keep going back and forth with the numbers. I wanted to keep as limited pages as possible. The very first thing that I want all of us to understand about the office of the vice president. In the office of the vice president, there is a group called the Group of 77, which is the disabled group. There are allotments also for under the vice president budget. So if you saw the vice president budget, office budget for like $2 million, I want you to also know that there's a component that goes to that. Since we talk about the special allowances, Anthony, again, I want to be very, very clear with you. Special allowances, what we should be doing for our people is this. I will use the lawmakers' explanation of what the special allowances were. There were a lot of different things that were offered to government officials. Now, the vice president, I repeat again, the vice president of the Republic of Liberia for 12 years, special allowances encompassed a lot of different perks that came along with it. What I'm struggling to understand from you here is that what is the crime that was committed? The president office budget was over $13 million. The vice president office budget was less than $3 million. This is the number 2 mayor in the Republic who was traveling extensively around the country, both domestically and internationally. So special allowances until we have the total what it was breaking down into. Then again, Anthony say, I want to be very clear here for you. For the Liberian people to sit here and say the Unity Party government was the most corrupt government, I want to read out certain numbers for you fellow Liberians today. Let's look at this government budget. What I have with me today is the CDC government 2018-2019 budget. Let's look at general allowances, which encompasses that of the vice president and everybody in his office. Granted, general allowances was $411,406 under the Unity Party government. Under the CDC government 2018-2019 budget, general allowances was $881,446. So which government is wasteful? Is it the Unity Party government or is it the CDC government? Mr. C has been fair. The Liberian people will make that determination. Again, I want to say this. The vice president has a normal responsibility in every country. Vice president performs duties in the area when the president cannot. They travel when the president cannot travel. So again, I think for us to have a conversation around this particular subject, to be able to bring to the people, the fair way for us to do this was to take what encompasses the general allowances and break it down and say, $20 went to scratch card. Do you think it was necessary for us to buy scratch card for the vice president? Do you think it was necessary? That would have been fair. But again, if you would say as a talk show host that the UP government was wasteful, I'm just giving you a number from the current government. Who is wasteful then? Is it the Unity Party government or this government? So that means from the beginning, I really thought that you would have been open-minded, but you shown to be very biased against the Unity Party government based on your deliberation. And the fact of the matter, you continue to try to keep me from looking on the other side. It's like someone telling me, just look here. Just look here. Don't look on the other side. I will not do that. And that is why I'm saying, Anthony said, general allowances for the vice president for a country with a $530 million budget. What was the problem? We also need to be looking at the results.
Mr. Lobbo, are you ever going to rest and allow me to come in, or you just want to be talking, and I've sit here and watch you? Is that why you want? Is that how you want this conversation? Because this is why you do, Josh. You want to complain, and you don't want to answer the question so that you can have the time to lecture as you will always do and lecture and lecture. And I will not allow that. Thank you. And I'm going to put up the budget here. Because the first thing you said, I didn't want to show the budget.
All of them, so that we can see the facts.
So you were talking about the group of 77. And I want to repeat for those listening to us. The budget is clear. Compensation of employees in here. Now, George was talking about the group of 77. The group of 77, the budget line here is budget line 100.
Is it under the vice president office?
George, you were speaking and listening and listening. Can you give me a chance? So this is the group of 77. 2016, 2017. For the group of 77 is 237,000 for the group of 77. Now, that is different from the special allowance here for the office for the vice president. So I want you to know that. Now, if you come below, folks listening to us here, it says here again, let me highlight that here. This is compensation of employee. It's broken down here completely.
Beautiful.
Thereby telling you, so when it comes follow, it says basic salary, civil service is right here. It tells you. General allowance, it tells you right here. Special allowance, it tells you right here. I tell you this is what for the what? The compensation of employee, it has been broken down completely here. Now, when you come here, it say use of goods and services.
Beautiful.
Fine. So it said foreign travel, means of travel. And you see the figures here. It's George Lobbo telling me that all the employees in the office of the vice president, they are the one traveling from one place to another, and then the money being allotted for them. Let George Lobbo explain.
Great. And
Go
keep
ahead.
that budget there. You see, this is one reason why, Anthony, many Unity Party partisans, when they reach out to me about this show, and I say I will come on there. And Anthony, I'm sorry to say that I don't know if you were aware, when the vice president travels, he does not travel alone. The vice president travels with entourage. Yes. He is the vice president. And traveling allowances, you needed to understand. Traveling allowances allotted for the vice president office encompassed all those who travel with him, their per diems, their hotel costs, their tickets, everything falls in their traveling allowances. So again, this is why I keep saying the way in which we would have argued here was Ambassador Boakai got traveling allowances as vice president. He did not take one trip abroad. That would have been a fair argument. That means if Boakai did not travel, Ambassador Boakai should return the funds, because if it were traveling allowances. But Anthony said, I will just bring you up to speed. In 2017, Ambassador Joseph Newman Boakai visited the state of Arizona. While in Arizona, Ambassador Boakai spent over 3 nights here. He was staying at the Sheraton downtown. All right? At the Sheraton downtown. He came with his group, with his entourage. Now, not only that, let me tell you what was accomplished on that trip, Anthony. The vice president, while in the state of Arizona, signed a memorandum of understanding on behalf of the Liberian government with all the major universities, including Arizona State University. I attended that program right on Washington Street, downtown Phoenix. Not only that, while the vice president was here on that trip, the vice president signed a memorandum of understanding with all the Maricopa Community Colleges Union here to provide technical and logistical support to Liberian community colleges that were being established by the UP. The Arizona State University and University of Phoenix also in that MOU committed to provide technical support to the University of Labrador and other universities in the country. So now what are we saying here? What is the argument? That the vice president took money and didn't travel? Is that fair? No, we know that's not true. Because we know Ambassador Boakai over the course of 12 years, Mr. C, if you may not be aware, he took pretty close to 40 trips around the world. 40. From Beijing to Malaysia, Indonesia, to Amsterdam, Sweden, all over.
40 trips in 2016, 2017?
Anthony said, I hope you pay attention. I said over the course of 12 years, the former vice president took pretty close to 40 trips in totality. That's what I just gave you. So the fair way to argue what you should have done, if I was going to be making this argument, would have been to say Ambassador Boakai was allotted traveling allowances. He didn't travel nowhere. He took the money and didn't travel. Now, Joel Howard Taylor is receiving traveling allowances. How many trips has Vice President Joel Howard Taylor taken anywhere? Since we know. Have you complained about it if you want? So who is wasteful? Have Joel saying my travel allowances have been returned? So who is wasteful? At least Ambassador Boakai's time during the UP government, we saw the former vice president traveling extensively. Have we seen Joel take the number of trips that Vice President Boakai took? Since we want to talk about who was more corrupt, who is wasteful, I think that's a fair analysis to make. So like I say again, Anthony said, when the vice president traveling allowances, it encompasses airfares, per diem for those people, start paying for them, and whatever cost they may incur on that trip. That is what I know about it. And I'm a when I went to Liberia, Anthony said, let me give you a scenario. I went to Liberia to campaign against the referendum. You know what the budget was. I set a minimum budget of $10,000. A mere George Lobbo. A rental car in Monrovia was costing me $75 a day. When you take a car outside of Monrovia, it's anywhere from 125 to 150 or 250, depending on the car. When I was in Monrovia, Mr. C, I carried 2 securities that I was paying $50 every Thursday. Whatever they ate when they were with me, I paid. Okay?
George,
so that is just me. Then imagine the vice president. Come on, man. What is the conversation here?
George, there is a big conversation here. There is a big conversation here, and we're going to have this conversation. I'm not going to buy your story. You spending $10,000 going to Liberia to appear on radio station, go here and there, do photo ops, cost you $10,000. You know, that is a classical example of how wasteful the Unity Party government has been. So again, we will go back to the budget and we will discuss the numbers. First of all, we're going to define some terms here for the listening audience. So in the budget, before I can define the terms, let me show the numbers to the people. Basic salary, this is the number. Now, for the vice president, special allowance is $215,000. As though this money is not enough for 12 months. This is not 12 years, folks. The vice president, general allowance, $524,000. Just on allowance, he has special allowance, and then he has general allowance. Now, another thing I'm going to show you, and then I'll go job Lobbo all the time in the world. When the vice president travels, they call something daily subsistence allowance. That is the figure, $112,000. Now, as though that is not enough, they have something called daily travel incidental allowance. On that same trip, they are giving the vice president that money. And even domestic travel, daily subsistence allowance is $512,000. So let's define the terms and see whether there's any difference in between to prove whether or not Unity Party, especially the vice president, was not in this business of wasteful spending. So let's look at daily subsistence allowance. What's the definition? The total contribution towards charges such as meals, lodging, gratuities, and other such payment made for services rendered during official travel.
Beautiful.
Now,
beautiful.
In travel, right? Then we'll come to incidental allowance. A payment made directly to a traveler to cover the cost of low value daily expenses. Josh, what I pick up in the two definitions is that they're talking about basically the same thing, the cost associated with travel.
No, they're not.
So what is the rationale, may I learn? So define for me, how is incidental allowance different from daily subsistence allowance on the same travel, and why is the figures that huge?
You see, first and foremost, Mr. C, you've not been able, I think, like I said, I gave you all the time, and 3 different shows. The reason I keep pointing at it, I gave you all the time.
Stop saying you give me all the time. You don't allot time on my show. So stop saying that.
Mr. C, you interrupted me again. So let me proceed here. The very first thing I want you to understand, Mr. C, is that a government that is in the business of providing services, the most important thing that we will argue is what was the output of the government, what was being brought to the country, what was the return on our investment as a government. When we talk about, I'm glad you talk about services provided, other expenses, low-cost expenses. Mr. C, when the vice president travels, the vice president does not rent the car that George Lobbo rents. Depending on how many security the vice president travel with, there will be security arrangement made in the country he or she is going. I don't know the details. I did not work on that. I was never in the office. What I would say to any normal Liberian, and the reason why you have not been able to make this case, I will say this clear. What the Liberian people are concerned about, with all the money that we spent on the Unity Party president, vice president travels, what did we get back? Let me give you an incident, Mr. C. In 2014, Vice President Boakai traveled to the United States. He addressed the UN General Assembly. He rallied the world. What did Liberian get back in return? So let's just be hypothetical. Let's say that 550,000 was given to Boakai for a trip. Ambassador Boakai went to the White House, met with Barack Obama. What did Liberia get in 2014 after that trip? We got 25 million with US troops when our people were dying. So Anthony said, I know you're very smart people. Let's look at the return on investment. If we spend 500,000 on our vice president and his entourage to take a trip, what did we get back? President, we have spent 406,000 to go to Beijing in 2018. What did Liberia benefit? President, we have spent 206,000 to go to Paris. What did Liberia benefit? So this argument to me here is like, I'm struggling to balance who is wasteful. President, we have spent 1.5 million in his first year to travel. What have the country yield? Ambassador Boakai's travel, I just gave you a benefit when he came to Arizona. I just stated what was yield when he came here in 2014 and met with Barack. So I don't get this argument. And again, Mr. C, I was not an employee of the vice president. I did not work for the government. And so one of the reasons why I chose to come here is because I believe that if we are going to assassinate someone's reputation or call out a government as being corrupt, we should have the ability to compare the two governments. What did we spend money on this government? What did the country benefit? How much is the CDC spending as compared to what the UP was spending? I think, Mr. C, if you do a good job on that, you will really be able to prove to the Liberian people that the previous government was corrupt. Because President Weah have made 2 trips to Beijing, attended the African Summit, but with no returns. So this argument yet then, Ellen Johnson's selling office budget was under 15 million. President Weah 2018 office budget was $21 million. What did Liberia yield? So who was well corrupt? Who was spending more money? Is it the UP government? And you continue to say, I mean, like I said, you have proven to many other Liberians that indeed you are not just biased against the Unity Party government. The fact of the matter, you will not be able to show the CDC performance, show the CDC numbers to compare with the UP government, but you sit here today and say the Unity Party government was more corrupt or more wasteful. Can you also be able to show me what was the People's Redemption Council, Vice President Harry Moluba, the late Harry E. Moluba, office allowances numbers were spending? That's how we should have this conversation to prove.
Mr. Lobbo, if you wanted us to have this conversation to compare budgets of governments with the budget of the Unity Party government, you should have communicated that. When I had a conversation with you, and the reason we are having this show is because I had a show on the 2016-2017 budget in which I was able to interpret based on my research that the Unity Party government was wasteful. And one of the places it wasted the money was on the office of the vice president. That's why we are having this discussion. Now, if you have told me, Anthony, I know this is why you did on the show, but I want to come to compare budgets with previous government, we would have done that, but you did not tell me. I fund the budget and sent it to you, showing that our conversation was going to be, our conversation was going to be on the 2016-2017 budget. You know, and that's why I'm trying to push back, but you try to pull me against the crowd that, oh, the man said, Monjot discussed this. But I understand the tactic. You said, you know, I'm a Bieber, but let me show you this and I allow you to come in quickly. And this is one of the reasons Mr. Lobbo, I say to you, the Unity Party government was wasteful. Josh, we do research here. We are not perfect, but we don't just open our mouths here to go after people to holding them accountable. Now, I have information here that we have researched. In this information on the screen to further prove that in Liberia, our governments are wasteful. But my presentation was on the vice president's budget. And the reason I did that because he only told us about how much he was making for the first 6 years and chose not to tell us for the remaining half of the 12 years. So I felt that something was wrong at Denmark. But let me bring this quickly. Folks listening to us here, on the first column, what you see there is budgets and salary and benefits for Liberia. You see the president, for example. Now, if you look in the middle column, you see Liberia, and our budget has been hovering around 535, 540 million for the most part. And yet the president will walk away with 3.9 million.
Okay.
But then look on the far right, which is the third column. That is the United States of America. A budget in the tune of 4.79 trillion. And yet, the president of America, folks, walks away with just 400,000. It didn't even reach 500,000. 400,000 as yearly salary. Compare that with what Ellen Johnson Sirleaf gets. And not only Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, but most Liberian president, we have falls in the same category around 3. Come to the vice president. Come on the first column again. That's the vice president. In the middle, how much does our vice president get? $2.4 million as the budget for the vice president. Compare that with the U.S. Let me learn, Josh. I will give you time. Okay. Compare that with the United States with a budget of 4.79 trillion. How much does the vice president of America make? $230,000, folks. If you compare America budget with Liberia budget, and you compare what the officials of U.S. make compared to Liberia, folks, this is a scientific fact that all our government officials, including Boakai, who George Lobbo claims is Mr. Clean, they are practicing what you call legalized corruption. How you make little money, but you ain't higher than the person who makes more money in terms of budget. George Lobbo, is not wasteful? Then explain to the listeners here what is wasteful. Your turn.
All right. I want you to leave the numbers there, and I'm glad you did this. The very first thing, Mr. C. You see, my job here is not to talk about your ability to research, to critique that ability. No, I have tremendous amount of respect for what you do. But here's what I would say to you, Mr. C. You see, when people talk about the United States, for example, it is true the president made 400,000. Mr. C, you do not understand what other allowances president of the U.S. get. Not only that, let me be very clear here. When a president, once you become a lawmaker, for example, in America, and you leave office, you have insurance for the rest of your life. I recall in 2014, I traveled with former Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel. And I was shocked to know that Chuck Hagel still carried 2 Secret Service with him, and he was sitting first class in a plane. Now, again, I will say this very clear with you. In Africa, does it make sense that, yes, indeed, we need to cut spending on how much we spend on government? I've always said that. But again, Anthony said, I like to be realistic. I want to be fair enough. When you look at a government in Africa, the notion that we don't want a president because in Africa where our leaders are superheroes or our government officials, the goal here is to be able to say, my man, listen, we pay this person this much so that is why today Ambassador Boakai did not leave power, and then to hear major corruption scandal on him, or you did not hear him that there was a scandal on him. And I will say this to you, Mr. C, very clear. The fact of the matter here that you chose Ambassador Boakai, I think it is a clear indication to that of the public that for whatever reason you may have against the former vice president, you've really proven that, because I think the very first thing that you would have argued here, if you wanted to be transparent, would have said, what was our lawmakers making? We must not forget that. I'm glad you talk about 2016, 2017. Current President George Weah was in the legislature. He was then is the senator. Current Vice President was also in the legislature, who also voted for the budget, was a senator, and so many other people. And it's unfortunate today that we sit here after they approved the budget. They felt that based on the vice president, we must not forget, Anthony, the legislature is the one that sets the president and vice president's salary. Who are the legislature? They are the direct representation of the people. So let's get that straight. That means the people who represent the people. They decided that for us as a country, this is how much we want to pay our president and vice president. And you are sitting here today because the people's representatives decided to pay a president and vice president. That George Lobbo, because of that, that makes the person corrupt. I will say this to you, Mr. Steele. I want to bring something to the audience here, because I think this conversation, you've proven to the Liberian people exactly what you were trying to accomplish, and I will let them make that decision. But on the notion that you continue to say that the Unity Party government was wasteful, I want to be very factual here, Mr. Steele. And if that is your definition of being wasteful, then I will take it. But let me say a few things. You see, in Liberia, our people have been struggling for too long. This is why when we took the government, when we took over government, the Unity Party made a $6.5 million in our national reserve. We invested and expanded the economy. We took a registered nurse from making $15 to making 250 up to 350, depending on her location. We took a medical doctor who was making $150 to making $1,050. Not only that, the least civil servant, we increased civil servant salary by more than 100%. Could we have done more? Absolutely. There are a few things I want to point out. You see, if your understanding of the Unity Party being wasteful, then I'll take.
Let me know when you're done.
Mr. Say, you told me I'll be uninterrupted. Let me finish, sir. All right?
No, I'm only telling you because I want to give you as much time, because if I don't remind you, you will keep going over and over. Go ahead, sir.
So, fellow Liberians, the government that was wasteful, according to Mr. C's definition, we were wasteful. It is true, like you said. This is why we look at a hospital like JFK. We gave $9.5 million to JFK, annually in the budget. We also look at a hospital like Phoebe, very significant hospital, strategically positioned. We gave Phoebe $2.1 million. We look at ELB Hospital, for example, $7,000. Now, the government who said the UP government was wasteful, when they came to power, what did they do? The CDC government, they decided to cut subsidies for hospitals. Now, we were concerned about the livelihood of our people. We're concerned about improving the living standard of our people. Mr. Steele, again, I will be very clear with you. Should we as a country, all of us, assume responsibility for what have happened? Absolutely. Do we need to cut down spending as a government? I agree with you. This is why Ambassador Boakai said the other day. Don't forget, he said, if the people say we should get paid $3,000, I would take it. He said, because in the first 5 years, I made $5,000. He made it clear, which means he has expressed his willingness. But again, Mr. C, you are sitting here today and say that after the people representatives, the legislature that set the salary of the president and the vice president, set the vice president's salary, you are sitting here today and calling him corrupt because the legislature set a salary for him? Is that a fair statement? Then let the people be the judge. If that is why you have decided to defeat his character on, then go for him, Mr. C. But I mean, at least he did not set his salary. Nothing that was given was done by himself. It was appropriated by the legislature. And I think it is fair enough. This is why when we speak in terms of reform, we must also tell the people who is responsible to set the salary of the president and vice president. It is the legislature. Who elects the legislature? It is the Liberian people. So, Mr. Sie, I think you've been unfair to Ambassador Boakai. You've been biased against him. You've tarnished his reputation for no reason. He has done no wrong. Did he take
Josh,
money from job he didn't do? That was unfair.
I will hold you there, and I will not allow you to lecture us without speaking to the substantive issues and the numbers that I'm bringing at you. I
No,
mean,
I'm
I
here
thought,
to just
may
to
I, may
back
I,
you
may I, may I continue? You
up. Go
know,
ahead.
we have the budget here. We have the numbers from the get go. You say, "Oh, Ansolina want to show the budget." I show the budget. I have the numbers. Let's deal with the numbers. Now, your lecture that we send money to JFK, we send money there. Yeah, I get that lecture. But Joe, here is the thing. Why will you say if you are in here with Joseph Human Boakai, should anybody listening to us expect us for all to be objective and hold Ambassador Joseph Human Boakai accountable on anything? I don't think so. From the picture I see, but here is Joseph Human Boakai by his own admittance, George. He said our government squandered a lot of opportunities. And let me show you when he said a lot of opportunities. George, I maintain the Unity Party government was wasteful and maybe might be the most wasteful government ever in the history of Liberia. And Josiah Human Boakai is one of those. Now, let me show you what Josiah Human Boakai, the Unity Party government, left with us. This is your county, Bon County. Look at the Central Bank of Liberia. This is the Central Bank of Liberia branch, folks listening to us, that the Unity Party government left with the Liberian people. And the vice president budget was around $2 million. And the vice president was getting daily assistance, incidental. So the fact that he's a vice president, he should just take about any amount of money and it is justified because he's a vice president. And that is the lecture that I'm getting here. In the words of Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, the educational system was a mess. Did the Unity Party leave with the Liberian people a better educational system? Many of you are aware that officials in the Unity Party government, by your own admittance here, that the legislators were making around 15. That is true. So was Joseph Human Boakai. He was making so much money, as evidenced by the graph I show you, comparing that with the United States that has a budget in the tune of 4.79 trillion. So, folks, you will be the judge here in the discussion. The vice president of Liberia, Joseph Human Boakai, told the Liberian people he was making $5,000. Let the vice president come clean. Or I thought that is why George Lobbo came to do here. George Lobbo, this is my question, and I'll allow you to speak as long as you wish. Has there been an audit done on the office of the vice president for the 12 years he was in office? And all the trips that you talk about, with these allowance, daily assistance, incidental, has there been a report on these expenditures of the vice president to prove that he is this Mr. Clean? Go ahead, sir.
You done?
Well done.
All right, beautiful. I'm glad. I like how you begin this particular conversation by showing photos. I like that. Put that photo up for me, please. I want the photo with me and Ambassador Boakai. Put it up. Great. I will say this to every single Liberian. You see, in life, one of the problems we've had in Liberia is the issue of mentorship. And I'm glad and I'm humble and I'm extremely proud to know such a decent public servant, a young man who will come from the village of Wesonga, who will work and come to Monrovia, who will work as a janitor at CWA
George,
to
by the way,
acquire education.
this one is my favorite. I didn't mean to interrupt. This one is my favorite.
Okay, I want you can keep it there. Or who will come to CWA, who will work as a janitor to acquire education. He was the fifth son of his mother, who will sell uniforms, who will work in a principal office. What it tells me is that a man who was determined, who will live in the slums in West Point to acquire education, will go to the University of Labrador and graduate after serving as a janitor at the School of the Elites, and he will become the president of CWA, the school I graduated from. I am proud to be associated with such a humble man. Not only that, this humble man will go on to become a warehouse supervisor in Vonjama at LPMC. Again, while as warehouse supervisor, he will rise up and will be LPMC managing director, the man who will lead that entity to glory. So again, I believe in public service. In America, Anthony, there is a reason why when a former soldier shows up, they say veteran. A veteran must board a flight first. The reason why they respect them because people believe in public service. And such a man must be celebrated. I will use the word of Lavia Gu, the chairman of the ANC on Spoon Talk. He said Ambassador Boakai have earned his stripes. He deserved the Liberian flag when he does depart this earth. And because of that, I am grateful and I'm proud any day for such a man with such a long public serving record that there has never been in the history of a proven corruption scandal where he has been prosecuted and found guilty. I am pleased to have him as my political leader. And Mr. C, let me say this to you. As a young man like me, when you join organizations, the goal is for you to do your best and to represent that institution well. And because of that, how many young people of my age today will sit back and say, I am an executive member of a major political institution in the Republic. For this, I am proud and I'm humble any day. I will take picture with Ms. You told me I would speak forever. You want to interrupt me? That's fine.
Josh, I'm not interrupting you. You are having a conversation. George,
okay,
George,
so
you
when you
spoke,
I didn't stop you though.
I'm just saying congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. So let me answer a few questions. So I'm proud. And I wish Ambassador Boakai would like to take more pictures with me because such a dedicated public servant, I need more. Now, let me get to something here quick. You began the conversation and said that Ambassador Boakai squandered opportunities. You see, again, one of the accusations that were made, I remember you and I, we've had this show multiple times. You said one time that Ambassador Boakai did not speak when he was vice president. Today, you've proven that as vice president, he was honest when he said we squander opportunities. I will say this to you, Mr. C. When you ask Barack Obama, say, are there things you would have done differently? He said, yeah, there are some things I wish I would have done differently. So those opportunities were squandered. I will give you an example. The reason you see the Democrats in America have said they will go big and go bold because the Democrats regret what they did in 2008. They felt they didn't go bold enough. So when the Unity Party say that when the vice president said that we squander opportunities, he was talking about areas where he felt they could have done exceptionally well. And based on that performance, he feels that he has to be honest. And that is why, Mr. C, this is why Liberians respect him. That the fact of the matter, he was in the system. He was not afraid. He was proud to say it. Ariel, let me give you another statement since you don't have it. He also said, he said, I do not fire, I do not hire, I do not fire. For example, do you think any member of the Unity Party was proud the way in which Noka went down? No, we were not proud. So yes, there were opportunities we missed out on. But let me say this, Mr. C. Every government will have challenges, but you cannot use those challenges and turn a government to be a complete failure. That is not true. If you look at the accomplishment, which I hope that you will have the time to give me the ability to bring some facts to this discussion today. But I want to just speak on something. On the issue of Ambassador Boakai's repetition, Mr. C, you talk about audit. The Unity Party government, in our efforts to promote transparency, for the first time in Liberia, we created an open budget system. Not only that, we also signed the Freedom Information Act. What does that act do? It allows people like you to go to any public service center and ask for any public records if you want it, Mr. CA. We done that because we wanted to be transparent. So what you need to do is, who has to audit him? When the government feel there was corruption, there was mismanagement, then yeah, if Ambassador Boakai took money and travel and did not bring receipt, or the government, because don't forget, you need to, I will ask that moving forward, you need to read the Public Financial Management Act. During the Unity Party government, anything above 5,000, it had to go through the budget voucher system. They didn't take cash and give it to you. So you had to make sure that that money went through the proper procedures. So as far as I'm concerned, Mr. CA, if the government felt that the vice president did something wrong, then yeah, an audit would have been warranted. That audit would have been demanded. When do people audit? Like what the court report told us, that because of the inconsistency and discrepancy, there needs to be further understanding. Let me say this to you. The fact that you don't do audit don't mean that the people were corrupt. No, that's not true. You conduct an audit if you feel that something did not go right, if you believe that everything was not accounted for properly. That is why you conduct an audit, to ensure that everything is checked. And let me say this, Mr.
I disagree.
Okay, let me finish, Mr. C. Let me finish my statement. The CDC government has the constitutional authority. If they believe that the former government or the former vice president did something wrong, they can conduct an audit. One thing he has been very clear, he said the records are there. Let me join. I remember our chairman emeritus, Chairman Wemope, said to the CDC government one time, he said, CDC government audit us. And Mr. Sia, I want you to also understand, I've heard you say numerous times that there have been no audit conducted on the previous government. You and many other Liberians, that is a lie. And we all need to desist. The CDC government have conducted audit on the past government, but the CDC government chose where they wanted to audit. There was an audit conducted at Noka, which was led by Undubusi Unwambodike. There was an audit conducted at the Ministry of Agriculture, which was also led by Undubusi Unwambodike. So if there's any reason that the government believes something did not go right, I think they have a responsibility, they have the constitutional mandate to do it. And Mr. Sear, I will say this for our listening audience. Until an audit is done and proves someone guilty of wrongdoing, I think we as professionals should desist from antagonizing and dehumanizing people's character on the basis of mere speculation. This persecuting people in the court of public opinion needs to stop. We need to do better. When we believe that something wrong happened, Mr. Say, you have a current grade on the show, I think you should make recommendation to him, saying he's in government. Let them do the right thing. Let me come to the issue of the central bank. You show the central bank, I don't know, from what I saw, it is the fence outside. You said in Bond County. Mr. Say, again, let me say to you, what you've not shown to the public, can you also show the ministerial complex or compound that was the administrative compound that was constructed in Banga? Have you seen it?
I've seen it, Josh.
Okay, but you will not show that, right? The Unity Party didn't do nothing. You want to show what you think you can show.
My job is to show. My job is to show.
But hey, Mr. Say, let me finish. Let me finish.
How long you going to answer simple question like 10 minutes?
Let me finish my thought, Mr. C.
You asked you 2 questions and you're taking about 15 minutes to answer it.
Mr. C, you went out with barrage of false allegation against the former government and you tarnishing the reputation of the vice president, and I'm supposed to sit there and just laugh with you? You expect me to do that? I can't do that. So it's either you want to give me the chance or you don't. If you want me to speak, then fine.
Answer one question or 2 questions shouldn't tell you 30 minutes.
Repetition with your false narratives far from the truth. I just told you. Why won't you show the Liberian people the administrative compound constructed in Banga? Now, let me also say, the Liberian people know. Do you know where the central bank was located in Monrovia when the UP government took over? It was on I think Kere and the street west side, or the National Post Authority, Ministry of Post and Telecommunication right there. The United Party government renovated the central bank and moved it on Ashmore Street. Look at that building. So what you needed to do, the central bank is also an independent institution. I think you should have said, what happened to the leadership? How does that tie with the vice president, for Christ's sake? You've shown to all the audience today how biased you've been against this vice president. And I'll conclude on this note, Mr. C. Let me say this to you, sir. You've not been able to do a good job to tarnish his reputation. From what I've seen, whatever you hope to accomplish, I'm grateful that I've been here. And I will say this to you. You continue to say the Unity Party government was wasteful, but you are yet to provide numbers from this current government so we can draw a line between the two governments. And I think until you do so, I think the most prudent thing to do is to desist from antagonizing the government, because you believe that that is how you can dehumanize and attack Ambassador Boakai's character. That is all I would say, sir. So go ahead and say what you want to say about it.
Thank you, Josh Lobbo. And you see, this is what I want to say, Josh. If this politics, you are on record for saying you've been in this thing for how long, like 15 years old or something?
2005.
Since 2005, you've been into politics. And I see that this place is hard for you. And tell Mr. Boakai, if this politics is too much for him, let him just retire. What I would not do is for somebody to run around to say you're antagonizing, you're attacking, you're demonizing, and that's the thing I will not take, because, Josh, my role is to hold all public officials accountable. That is my role, and that is what I'm doing here. I asked you two simple questions, and you didn't answer the questions, George. But I will not give you the opportunity to answer them because you wasted 50 minutes. I asked you the question. Why Joseph Human Boakai chose to tell us that he was making $5,000 for 5 years, in 6 years, when Joseph Human Boakai was in government for 12 years? Why he chose to do that? Josh, you will be quiet. And
I didn't say nothing to you, though.
Okay, thank you so very much. Joseph Human Boakai, you telling me holding him accountable is tarnishing his reputation and saying all that? No, George, I am holding the vice president accountable. The vice president was in government, and I say to you, the Unity Party government was a wasteful government. We are having the discussion on the budget of 2016-2017. You have diverted until maybe you are getting what you wanted. But let me show you again, and let me show to the people listening to us. Folks, this is the budget. And my discussion here is meaning on the 2016-2017 budget to showcase how all Liberian governments have been ripping the country off by allotting to themselves more money and allotting little or nothing for the people of Liberia. The thing you're looking at here on this board, you see here, our governments from Unity Party up to now, and Unity Party playbook is what this other weakling government is following. This government is allotting $200,000 as county development funds for all of our counties. This is the same thing that Unity Party did when Unity Party was in power. The Unity Party government were allotting just about the same amount for all of our counties, around 200,000. But the Joseph Human Boakai office was walking away with 2.4 million Liberian dollars. Again, those listening to us, how can the office of the vice president get $2.4 million? And a county comprising sometimes about 500,000, depending on the size of the county, $200,000. The Unity Party government honored Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, and Joseph Human Boakai did that for nearly 12 years, allotting peanuts to our counties, while Ellen was walking away with 3 million, and Joseph Human Boakai office was walking away with 2 million. That is what they have done. So, folks listening to us, if that is not wasteful, then what it is? Is Joseph Human Boakai and his office more people than the counties? Let George come and clean this up.
You spoke, I didn't say a word. So the very first thing again, let me respond to you said the vice president told us he made $5,000 and why he didn't tell us he was making this much. Anthony said, I think what you should do if you're going to quote the vice president, quote him exactly. There's a reason for that. You misquoting the vice president. And again, you see, one thing I've always said when you want to use somebody's words, please use them and quote them in the context in which he spoke, because that would give the statement its true meaning. The vice president was responding to a question Costa asked him, and he said, Costa, I have no problem. If the Liberian people say we should make $3,000, I would take $3,000 because when I was vice president for my first 6 years, I made 5,000. That is the context in which he spoke. So he didn't choose to come and tell you I was making 5,000. He didn't select to say when. That is not a fair statement. That is when I say your job here to tarnish his reputation, that is just proven by your statement here, Claire. Again, you began the conversation talking about the County Development Fund, Mr. C. The very first thing you failed to acknowledge, it is this government that is the first government since independence to even make appropriations for counties in the national budget. Never happened. Now, what you don't understand again, Mr. C, that was not just on the County Development Fund. The government also established the county social development funds. So counties got county development fund from the budget and they receive social development funds. So social development fund, which came from investments that were taking place in that county. The government of the Unity Party decided that percentage went back to the county. So you refuse to talk about that. But let's leave that. I continue to say, you've proven how biased you have been here today. But I will continue to expose you on that. Now, let me come to something again. You continue to talk about the Unity Party government was wasteful and this and that and this and that. Again, it is the same renting, Mr. C. You've said it, you've used this line more than 5 different times today. I want to be very, very clear here. Appropriations are made by the legislature. That is the constitutional function. When appropriations are made and the budget is passed into law, the office of the vice president, the budget is given for a fiscal period, depending on the vice president activities. I've been very, very clear on the record, Mr. C. I don't believe in restating myself. I don't like to do that. And the notion that you wanted to question my understanding of national politics, let me set the record straight. I told you I've been involved in national politics since 2005. I have my ID card to prove that. I was involved with the Liberian Action Party. I travel with Vani Sherman. I'm not afraid to talk about it. But what I'm going to do now for the Liberian people to speak in terms of context, I think this conversation is clear what you're trying to do. And when I say you want to tarnish his reputation, because all you've done is continue to go back and forth. So what I want us to do is let's look at credible international organizations that supported Liberia's effort during her recovery when the UP were in power. For example, Mr. C, I don't know if you have this. This is from the World Bank, just so you see it. And I will give you the report number so that you can say it is from the Unity Party government. Here's the report number, Mr. C. You can take a look at it. I'll read the number out for those of you Liberians who want to read it. It's very interesting, so you will know the truth. The report number is going to be 113720LR. And it says the Republic of Liberia from growth to development, priorities of sustainable reducing poverty and achieving middle income status by 2030. So this is from the World Bank. I think this will put this whole conversation in its nutshell as a result of what the UP government did, because I think you and myself opinion will not matter now. Let's go to our international experts who were there, who were funding some of the projects. Let them speak to the people. So what I will do, I'll be very, very key on a few things. I want to read something here very clear. They said growth in the context of sound macro framework was fundamental to Liberian economic recovery. GDP expanded at annual average rate of 6.2% during the period of 2005 to 2013. I will go down again. And they say here, very interesting. They said between 2007 and 2014, the national headcount poverty rate dropped. Listen to the English. The national headcount poverty rate dropped from 64% to 54%. This happened under a government that you turn was not doing what it was supposed to do. That's your understanding. Then let me go further on because I'm tired and I get going over and over because it seems like you just said in the same thing. So let's go to our international panel. They say in 2014, the regional Ebola crisis and sharp drop in global commodity prices disrupted Liberia's recovery. The economy contracted average of 0.8% per year. During 2014 and 2016, 3.2% in per capita term. Mr. CA, no government, when you call a government corrupt, a government that didn't do nothing, will have reduced poverty rate. When the UP government came to power, Mr. CA, the national poverty rate, according to the World Bank, was at 64%, sir. The government you claim didn't do nothing to improve the people's life. That's what the World Bank is contradicting. I'm not going to use my words anymore because it seems like no matter how much I do here, you will continue to go back and forth. So what I'm going to do, I want to be very, very clear. And let me go something. They say poverty data reveal deep and entrenched inequalities between regions, gender, and social groups. Liberia ranked 177 out of 184. Where were we when the UP government came into see? We have to be honest here. I've been very clear to the Liberian people. Not everything was rosy. We must not forget. I think a fair assessment for us to do as Liberians is to look at the two countries and say, what did Liberia inherit? What did UP inherit? What did the Unity Party inherit? That's what we should do. So what I will want to say to you, Mr. C, you can go ahead and continue to say what you want to say. But I will say this to the Liberian people. You all heard what happened. It's been very, very clear. I think Mr. C's conversation tonight has proven exactly what he wanted to do. And I'm glad that I had the privilege to be here. Mr. C, again, I have been very clear with you. When it comes to my Unity Party government, I told you I had a problem on the issue of income inequality. What do I mean by that? I have said to you, Mr. C, if a lawmaker who is a representation of the people was making 12, 13,000, I think a nurse should have made 500 to 700. But again, make from $15 to $350 is still a lot, but we could have done better. So I'm not here today to say when you pick into power, they put goals on the street, they build Yokohama. No, Mr. C, I won't do that. But again, you are antagonizing the vice president character. For money, he did not steal. For money, he did not take. Come on now, sir. What is there to talk about? If you believe that the budget I was giving to you, so what I think you need to show, Mr. C, is that every budget that was, everybody who got budgetary allotments in the government were corrupt. They stole money. But what you fail to do today, and you continue to say the Unity Party government was the most wasteful government, you are yet to show me numbers from the People's Redemption Council who received $500 million from the U.S. government in the first 2 years as direct assistance, who also increased Liberia's debt by more than $1.5 billion. You have not shown me development for even 500,000. The Unity Party government secured a $4.5 billion debt waiver for money we did not borrow. So you can't show me all that money, but you continue to sit here and just say the UP government was the most wasteful. You can't show me the CDC government who have come to power and inherited a $900 million debt. Today, our debt is $1.6 billion. You can't show me development for that money.
Thank you, Josh.
I think
Thank you, George. Folks, we will be concluding here, those of you listening to us. I asked George Lobbo a simple question earlier, whether or not the vice president was ever audited and whether there's any report anywhere. What was his answer? We passed a bill that gives you the authority or the opportunity to go and ask for it. All I wanted George Lobbo to have informed us was just simple. Yes, the vice president was audited. And this is what the audit says. Even Josh Lobbo, in his eloquence, he has said, once there is no problem, it's not necessary for audit. That was when we were speaking. If you listen to me, I said, I disagree. Audit is routine. It is not that there has to be an alarm of any financial misdealing before they can conduct an audit. No. But that is what the most eloquent Lord George Lobbo will want us to believe here. Now, his clarification on the 5,000 for 6 years, the way he put it, I was not it. It was Mr. Boakai who took upon himself to say that. But I understand, Mr. Lobbo's job is to clean it up when it is messy. I understand that. And I will remind those of you listening to us here, I reach out to Lobbo. In fact, I think he didn't want to reach out to me and say, Lord, you've been going on with the budget thing. I want to come and debate the budget. So the conversation, as many of you have been following, George Lobbo did not make it about the budget. He been going here and there, dancing all over the place. But since George Lobbo will not do that, I will stick to the budget. So let's come to, again, Mr. Boakai. Fuel and lubricant for Joseph Yaman Boakai, and I'm calling his name, 70,000. Now, fuel and lubricant for Joseph Yaman Boakai's generator. Except George Lobbo want to tell me where the vice president had an office, he had a generator there for all the office staff. This is Joseph Yaman Boakai. Fuel and lubricant for 12 months. That is intended for Joseph Yaman Boakai. Now, maintenance, repair and maintenance. Saver. I don't know. Folks, you got to listen to these people when they're writing this thing. What is the language of saver? Repairs and maintenance, saver. So George Lobbo will have to clean this up. Repair and maintenance, again, vehicles. So to repair Joseph Yaman Boakai, first of all, the government of Liberia is putting fuel in it, gas in it for Joseph Yaman Boakai, even though he said it was parked, it was a race car park. But the park car, folks, was getting 89,000 to repair it and maintain it. Now, repairs and maintenance, machinery and equipment, another money. Now, for stationaries, $35,000. Consultancy fees or services, $36,000. Now, food and catering, $38,000. Maybe George Lobbo will say the food and catering was for the people in the office for Joseph Yaman Boakai to cater to them. Entertainment and games. The VP had to entertain people and give, so he doesn't have to use the money. That's another money there. Then they come to operational expenses. They have general allowance. They have special allowance. Then they come to operational expenses. So if you have general allowance, you have special allowance. Then you come to operational expenses. Folks, you see the repetition of figures. Why would they use the general allowance for? Why would they use the special allowance for? Why would they use for the operational expenses for? So this is how government come and gone, including the Unity Party, in a criminal manner and legally corrupted our country. And George Lobbo does not want me to say it, and he thinks that it's clean because it was budgeted. But George Lobbo wants to make noise about other governments in the past, and he said he wants us to discuss those budgets. This is legalized corruption. That is why in our country today, folks, George Lobbo government left power with some classrooms in some part of Liberia having no chair, students sitting on the floor, and you want to intellectualize the discussion? One man office taking all this money, the United Party government left, some school has no chairs, some teachers not even paid. So I maintain, I wish George has come to respond to these numbers and justify and explain why he thinks these numbers, as were allotted by the Unity Party government, cannot be considered as wasteful and legalized corruption. They did this when schools didn't have things that they needed at those schools. And George Lobbo think that's okay because it was done for Joseph Boakai. He was the vice president, so he could take any amount. And that had made it right. Even though our budget remains around 500,000, George Lobbo said because the Unity Party took the budget from 80 million to 500 million, it was right for the Unity Party government to just give millions to the president and the vice president and even the speaker. George Lobbo said was okay because they grew the budget to 500 million. Folks, this is the kind of legalized corruption that was practiced by the Unity Party. And let me say this, before George Lobbo thinks that I'm backing any government, I'm saying all our governments are guilty of this, including the government of today. It is the most reckless government. But the discussion here was about the 2016-2017 budget. I hope George Lobbo will have stuck to what we agree on, but he tried to deflect to lecture us just as he will lecture us on the draft. And I'm a big fan of the draft, but here I focus on Liberia. No one comes here to lecture us about spider stories and all that. We stick to the issue. Josh?
All right, you had your chances. I didn't stop you. I didn't ask you when, and you do that when I'm speaking. First and foremost, you put operational expenses. Again, Mr. C, I continue to say to you, my job here is not to explain what operational expenses are. If you don't know, I think your best job would have been to go to we have an open budget system. Call the government office, call GSA, call PPCC, ask them what operational expenses. Maybe you've not ran an office before. The office of the vice president, I continue to state to you, Mr. C, it's not one person in the office of the vice president. There are so many other offices within the office of the vice president. You can't still get it. I don't know when you say he did not come prepared. What other prepare you want me to come? I've made you to understand the office of the vice president is not one room with one table. It's not. Do you understand? The vice president has a public relation officer. Do you understand? The vice president has so many different, he has an administrative assistant. Do you know all of that? What you should do if you want to be fair about analyzing the budget of his office, since you wanted to be specific, was to be able to first identify what encompasses the operational expenses of the vice president office. You didn't do that. The vice president have a chief of staff. Do you know the vice president chief of staff has an office in the vice president office? No, you don't know that. So when you keep bringing the numbers, it's like asking me, say, what is this? Then I'm asking you and telling you, Mr. C, again, what is the illegal thing that was done? You still can't tell me. Did Vice President Boakai receive money that was not appropriated to him? Did the office of the vice president take money that was allotted for a particular line item and it was not used? Did the government give Vice President Boakai $100 for expenses and the vice president went back to the government and said, no, I need more because my expenses finished? No, you have never said that. You have not been able to prove to me. Another thing you keep doing, which for me, you keep saying I'm running around. I just decided not to waste my time to keep going back and forth because I have been very clear with you. And I told you before, Mr. C, I repeat, and I will say again. You can explain how much you want. You can continue because I think if you wanted to be fair, If you felt that you wanted to talk about the budget since it was 2016, we could have gone through every single office. But it is clear that you wanted to go to tarnish Ambassador Boakai's reputation, which you've not done. 1 second in your words, you say it is legal, it is legalized, but I think it's corruption. Your opinion don't matter to me, because at the end of the day, Mr. C, and please, please stop mischaracterizing me. I'm here. Don't say what I didn't say. I have been very clear that Mr. C, the current president, was a senator. The current vice president was also a senator. All the CDC government officials who are your friends were also lawmakers at the time in the government. They saw the government budget, they approved the numbers. Now, my argument to you here is that, are you questioning that whatever was appropriated? Let me take one number that you put up. Please put up that number where you put up with the generator. The other day you were here, you said Ambassador Boakai did not have light to his house. But today you are saying there was a generator at his house. The government was providing fuel for the generator. Mr. C, I keep telling you, I didn't work in the office of the vice president. On these basic numbers, what we need to do, the reason I refer you to the Freedom Information Act, you have the right to go to GSA or GAC. You can ask GSA, when the government say fuel and lubricant, what do they mean by that? What type of expense is that? When the government says generator or office expensive, what does that encompass it? That would have been a fair thing for you to do. But you've chosen not to do that. And you think that by just sitting there and just talking. Now, what you fail to show to the Liberian people, which I will do for you, for example, I'm glad you brought the budget up. Now, let's look at some basic numbers here. In the Unity Party 2017-2018 budget, which we didn't complete, how much was appropriated for fuel and lubricant for generator? $11,738. Under the CDC government 2018-2019 budget was $15,796. But you still sit here and say the Unity Party government was wasteful. But I'm grateful that you were able to at least come back and redeem yourself. You said just now that this government is the most reckless government. So by judging from your words, I think that makes it clear that if you believe now that this government is the most reckless government, then you can't sit there again and say the Unity Party government was the most wasteful government, because then that argument don't suffice. But I want to say something. I wanted the conversation to be on substance. With everything we've talked about, what were the output from a performance perspective? What did Liberia gain on those travels? Where did Vice President Boakai go? Did Vice President Boakai sit in Monrovia? Do you know that Vice President Boakai was the one who was appointed by Madam Salif to lead the land dispute in Chicken Soup Factory? Vice President Boakai was the one who was charged with the settling of the Mandingos and the dispute in Lofa. So do you understand what the travel meant? When you talk about the UP government, Mr. C, don't forget, during the Unity Party government, we inherited the West Country with some of the most bad roads ever. It took us late before we began to pave roads. So why am I going to sit here and be questioning when the vice president took a trip? Those cars, I don't know what maintenance costs. The government will do its budgeting based on what they feel was reasonable, what they felt the cost was. As far as I'm concerned, and I continue to be very clear with you, you are asking me to tell you something that I should lie to you. Why would I lie to you? I keep making it very clear to you. The government, the legislature approved appropriations and for the office of the vice president, the office of the president, the office of the speaker. So they felt that based on the circumstances in the country, given where the vice president had to travel, given the trips he was taking, that those appropriations were justifiable. Now you said, yeah, continue to say, oh, he was corrupt. Then let's say, what determines someone being corrupt? Is it because you feel that appropriations approved by law in our country? Do you also, so let me ask you this question when you come in to speak. Do you know that the budget is a law in the country? So you are telling us that every law that is made is corrupt based on your assertion? Because if you believe that the budget is a law, that is approved by the legislature, who's appropriate. You are saying that the laws are corrupt then. So every law ever passed by any legislature is corrupt based on your assertion. So for me, I'm not going to sit there and keep renting. If you want to discuss Ambassador Boakai, then that's fine. I think it's fair we can take every single budget line. But at the end of the day, Mr. C, like you and I, we stay abroad. So if you believe that appropriations that were made to the office of the vice president was wrong, I will give you a scenario here. When the vice president received guests, you provide, depending on what the program the guests coming from, you provide entertainment for them. The vice president, it is a tradition to give out, to hand out gifts. Now, what you should have done for us, you should have been able to prove to us that money was appropriated for the vice president office, and that money was not used for the intended purpose. But for me to sit here today and be telling you, say, oh, station network providing the vice president office, the vice president is corrupt. But the vice president office was able to perform its duties throughout the year. So to me, I don't know the argument here you're trying to make. But again, like I said, hopefully based on your assertion, if your assertions are correct, then I strongly think every time the budget passes in Liberia, then the budget itself is corrupt. So those who execute the budget, so that means the county development fund as well is corrupt, because the county development fund you talk about was appropriated for in the budget. So I guess everything is part of corruption then. So there ain't nothing here to argue then. Because if we were appropriating, so that means the money that was being appropriated for hospitals, the money that was appropriated for community colleges, the money that was the UL budget we took to 16 million, everything that corruption then. So the money that established the community colleges, the money we used to reconstruct the hydro, everything that corruption based on your session. So then I guess everybody.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Josh. And folks, you listening to Josh, he said, what I should have done was to come and explain, go to budget office, ask what they mean by fuel and lubricant. Josh Lobbo reason of being here is to provide clarification. Did Josh Lobbo tell you on the issue of fuel and lubricant? Did Josh Lobbo bring you the report on fuel and lubricant to show that this was budgeted for fuel and lubricant? This is how it was used. Did Josh Lobbo give you that record? But Josh Lobbo is asking me that I am just calling numbers and I'm not giving breakdown. So did he come with a breakdown as to how all these figures were expended to prove that I am not saying the truth? No. Josh Lobbo would not. In fact, when Josh Lobbo called on me and approached me that he wants to come and clarify, I said, let's do it this week. He said, no, let's do it next week. He said, oh, no, the following week I have engagement. So this thing has been planned 3 weeks in advance. I send the budget to Josh Lobbo. Josh Lobbo is asking me to have asked budget office to explain what is fuel and lubricant, what is stationary, and come and explain. I know what fuel is used for. Josh Lobbo also said he tried to make an insinuation here that I don't know whether the office of the vice president has office staff, chief of office staff, secretary. You listened to him try to make that insinuation that I don't know that. And these are the kind of deflection and lectures that Josh Lobbo will give you. If Josh Lobbo had come prepared to exonerate Josiah Yaman Boakai, first he will tell us, yes, there was an audit done. Here is where you can find the audit, but he's telling me I should go and find it, even though he came here to clarify. He's telling you I should go to budget office and find the breakdown of the money that why couldn't Josiah Yaman Boakai have given him the breakdown of the expenditures during his time in office? Why he couldn't bring those records to show to you, the Liberian people? Man. He won't do that because it's not even available. The reason they would not give you that record, because it's not there. They were just spending money just about any kind of way. Last thing I will say, incidental allowance, daily subsistence allowance. All of you listening to me now, Google daily subsistence allowance. What it will take you to, it will take you to the United Nations. That term came from the United Nations cycle, NGO cycle for the most part. The first group of people that put that in the Liberian budget are the Unity Party. You know how it came about? Ellen Johnson Sirleaf was in the UN cycle, right? So she took the UN idea and brought it to government. This is how they were able to legally corrupt the nation's budget. And George Lobbo want to rationalize, say, oh, Anthony C is saying that the money we budgeted for the hydro, that corruption. No,
But
I'm saying when officials, a lot told themselves exorbitant amounts and budget for the benefit of the Liberian people, little or nothing, as was in the case of education, as was in the case of health, as was in the case of the counties, and George Lobbo trying to lecture me about social development funds. Social development fund, that when there is no investment in the country, you don't get social development funds. County like Grand Crew and other counties, no investment there, they don't get social development funds. What the government allows is the county development fund, around $200,000. Folks listening to me, is that fair for a county to get that amount? And a single official in government, Joseph Yima Boakai affects his signature. George Lobbo was saying that the legislature made the appropriation, but he forgot that it is the government through the finance ministry with the supervision of the president that drafts the budget.
I'm glad you said it, with the supervision of the president.
The president, in consultation with the vice president, the executive, because Joseph Yima Boakai is part of the executive. The executive drafts the budget and send it. And if you look at the budget, let me learn, Josh. If you look at the budget, pretty much about 90 to 80% of what the executive usually appropriates passes. The legislature only made little changes. Okay, let's add some money to ourselves. Let's add some money. So the amount that was budgeted for Joseph Yima Boakai, it was the executive branch that pulled it there, and the legislators. George will call them legislators. George, correct me if I'm wrong on that.
When you get done.
George Lobbo is calling lawmakers legislators. He said they are looting the country. The reason George is calling them legislators is because they appropriate for themselves more money than they appropriate for the Liberian people. So George is saying they are looting. But Joseph Yima Boakai, folks, who under the executive and the budget for him $2.4 million, just saying is not looting. So folks, you decide who is wrong here. And George, again, I wish you had come for us to debate the 2016-2017 budget, but we've been doing this thing since 2005. So I understand the tactics, deflect, and then you get away. We have to close. I will give you as much time as you need to respond and then conclude.
Great. So first and foremost, let me be very clear here today. And again, I will say this: it's not how much you lay it out and use the same words, repeat the same old statement that changes anything. Because again, I've been very, very clear. It is true. I refer to the lawmakers as legislators because I know the constitutional function of the legislature. They are the ones who are responsible to set the salary of the president and vice president. That is the first thing. So that means any vice president who got paid, even if it's $10 or $20, that means the legislature approved that. And you don't want to accept that. So granted. But again, you continue to go back and forth and said, George Lobbo should have come here prepared. There's nothing here to come prepared about. Except you tell me I need to say, if the vice president went to Beijing, the restaurant he ate in, I need to go bring a receipt for you. Come on, Mr. C. You should expect better than that. That's not possible. So I don't understand your definition of preparedness. That when the vice president travel, his foreign allowances, that the hotel he slept in, I need to go there. That he slept to the Sheraton, so I should go to the Sheraton and bring a receipt for you. Really? Is that how we reduce the compensation to? This is why I told you, I said, Mr. C, the Unity Party did a very good job by creating the Information Freedom Information Act. With that act, you have the right. One good thing the Unity Party government did, there was something presented to the public, to the Liberian people, called the Budget Performance Review Report. That tells you how the budget was performing. So when I say you should go and do your work, that is what I'm referring to. There's nowhere in the world that you expect me, if the vice president was traveling from Monrovia, let's say he was going to Lofa, you expected me to come here today and bring you receipt of a gas station the vice president come for a stop and bought gas? Really? And that is your understanding of me not being prepared? They say the vice president provided gifts, and you expect me to sit there and bring a receipt of the gift they presented? If that is your definition of me not being prepared, then I don't think I'll ever be prepared. What would be fair here to argue is that, what was the GSA report? Was there a report on the vice president of any financial improprieties? Was there any scandal of the vice president? Was there any record of mismanagement in the office of the vice president? You are yet to answer that question. You can't say nothing on that. But your assertion, your assumption that because money was appropriated for the vice president, that makes him corrupt. And then I say, okay, if that is your justification, so every money that was appropriated for in the budget, that means everybody was corrupt. You say no. And why did I hold the lawmakers to higher standard? Let me tell you why, Mr. C. The legislature is the first branch of government. And the Constitution in Article 1 states that all power is inherent in the people. And who are the direct representatives of the people? Are the legislatures. They are the ones who have the authority. They are the ones who can impeach the president. They are the ones. That is why the Constitution gave them the power to set the salary of the president and vice president. This is why the legislature is the one that appropriates Mr. C. This is not a civics class. I've gone over and over. You are asking me and say, George Lobbo came on and said, he didn't give us breakdown. Mr. C, you want to tell me you don't know what office expenses entails? Really? That I, George Lobbo, should tell you what an office expensive means? Or I should tell you what fuel means? When the vice president has vehicles that travels in his convoy, I think anywhere from 5 to 6 vehicles, and we don't know what fuel means. We don't know what generator means. I mean, Mr. C, come on now. I mean, that itself to me. So I can't do that. If that is what you term I mean not being prepared, that's fine. But let me be very clear with you again. You said we gave little to education. Mr. C, again, you prove your unbiasedness to the Unity Party government. You prove that you're being unfair. Because since independence, let's check which government ever took the educational budget to where it is. Which government ever increased the budget of the Ministry of Health? I show you here how much we're providing for hospitals as subsidies. I show you that. Do you want me to tell you what happened under this government that you refuse for us to talk about? And there is a reason why you shy away from that conversation.
What is the reason? What is the reason?
I will tell you. Do you know?
I need to know now.
Okay. Do you know that this government in the 2019-2020 budget under the CDC administration, do you know that all subsidies were cut off for religious and private healthcare centers? Do you know that? Under the Unity Party government,
you think that's the reason I'm shying away? Do you know the topic here, George?
So my point here, Mr. C, when you claim the Unity Party government was wasteful, that is some of the wastefulness we were wasteful because we were providing subsidies for private healthcare institutions. This government cut it off. One thing you continue to say, and from the beginning of this conversation, I tried to set the stage moving forward, and you continue to misinform our people. You continue to say the office of the vice president was $2.2 million. Mr. C, I keep telling you, in the office of the vice president, there is allotment to the group of 77. So that means you've been unfair to the office of the vice president. You've misinformed the public. So what you need to do is to take that money out of there and say, okay, here is what goes to the office of the vice president. The group of 77 get this portion. You refuse to do that. You continue to say, so money that were allotted to the group of 77, that's corruption because the legislature appropriated. So for you to come and say, oh, George did not come prepared, Mr. C, there's nothing here to come prepared about. I came here today, when I talk about providing clarity, you've been here antagonizing the reputation of Ambassador Boakai by creating these false narratives about legal appropriations being made to his office, for which you, in your code of public opinion, term as corruption, and you are yet to prove any financial mismanagement, any records of financial improprieties under the vice president leadership. So I would just say, you know, I understand we are in a political season, and there will be many of these things. Ambassador Boakai being in public service is for many, he's been there for a while, and as a result, everybody got their own reasons. So now that you've made it very clear that you can continue to go ahead and defend him, the very first thing. So I just can't continue to go back and forth with you on it. Like I said, my conversation was, Mr. C, when you come in and say, what is traveling allowance, Josh? Traveling allowance encompasses airfares, traveling tickets, the cost of the vice president trip abroad. That is what it means. Those are the clarifications I came to provide. What do they mean by subsistence? What do they mean by this? Mr. C, what do they mean by expenses? Office expenses. Office expenses encompasses what it takes to run the office of the vice president. Then you say he was not prepared. Then I don't know what you want me to give you. So if that doesn't help you, then definitely, then I said to you, if this does not suffice, if this does not help you, then maybe go to GSA, go there and ask. Then you say no. So traveling allowances for the vice president travels, for his trips he takes. It encompasses his lodging, in which it defines it. His hotels, his security, whatever covers that trip, Mr. C. So, like I said, man, but we understand these things will come out. Many people who have nothing against him, they are going to. It's unfortunate that a man who has been in public service this length of time, that today is the one. This is the one thing you brought up a budget. I thought you would have really shown me somewhere in the budget and say, George, this money was appropriated to the office of the vice president, and this vice president did not use the money. Traveling allowances were given to Vice President Boakai. He did not travel. There's no record of his traveling anywhere. But that again, I clarified and I named trips he took. And I even gave you the benefits of some of those trips. They went to DC when he addressed the UN in 2014. I gave you in 2017, which was the 2016-2017 budget. I told you when he came to Arizona and told you the benefit that Liberia got out of those trips. And if you say I didn't provide clarification for you, then like I said, your mind, whatever your mind is, and I wish you all the best on it. But I just want to say this, Mr. C. I think we owe it to our people to be honest to them. And if we want to go after somebody or tarnish someone's reputation, I think we should do better. What I would advise you to do is to say, you know what? I want to see how many trips did Joseph Boakai take? How much money was spent on that trip? Where are those records? That is what I would have appreciated. But to sit here today and say, because the legislature appropriated money for him and he used the money, so that made him was corrupt, then if that will make him corrupt, then he's going to be corrupt by your terms. And George, if you want me to conclude, I would like to conclude before I take
conclude. That's what I told you.
Thanks for the opportunity. Thanks to the Liberians who took up time because it's late, wherever you are, to follow this conversation. I hope that if this discussion will continue about Ambassador Boakai or any other government official, I think it's fair enough that all of us, especially those who will be antagonizing them, to be able to bring forth documentation to substantiate our claims. When you pointed out, if I have heard that Ambassador Boakai received traveling allowances. He did not travel. That would have been fair to say, yeah, that's bad. Like, for example, I remember when Edwin Melvin Snow was the what's it called, the LPRC boss. Mr. Snow was receiving traveling allowances. He was on a sanction. He did not travel. When you bring out things like that, like Joel gets traveling allowances, you will not talk about it. How many trips has this current vice president taken abroad? But she continued to receive all her traveling allowances. But that day, the Unity Party government, who vice president was traveling, is the one who was corrupt. So, again, Mr. C, I will say this to you. Ambassador Boakai is a decent man, and I'm grateful to have him as a political leader, and I'm grateful to have him as a friend. So I respect him. I believe in his character. People who truly know the guy, who knows what he stands for, they speak for his record. No amount of character assassination attempts will do anything to his record, because the Liberian people prove it, that with all the lies that were said about him in 2017, with all the castigations that were made against his record, the Liberian people say, you know what? We don't believe all these lies. He went against a coalition in a heated contender elections. He got 28% of the vote and went to the runoff. And in the runoff, where 1.2 million Liberians stay away, he accumulated 400 plus thousand votes. That tells you that Liberian people know the man, they believe in him, and come what may, Mr. C, I will say this again. Come what may 2023, Joseph Newman Boakai will be the leader of the CPP and will go on to defeat the CDC. I wish you all the best. Good luck.
George, thanks so very much for accepting this challenge. I'm sure you understand that you didn't get it easy here. It is not to score any point or to prove anything. I am not a member of any political party and will never be one. My role is to ask questions, to question things. I know as I question things, there may be mistakes along the way, for I am human. But on this one, with what I continue to tell you, that corruption has been legalized in our country. Government in the past, governments of yesterday, governments of today, they are all included. There is a reason, despite the huge funds raised by the Unity Party government, today we still find schools that don't even have a fitting roof or a fitting lab. And yet, a George Lobbo will want us to celebrate a Unity Party. And in his eloquence, he will say, there were challenges here and there. There are some things we should have done better. But the way he will articulate the issue of hospital being built, airport being built, he will not articulate the issues that were left undone. And George, let me tell you, these things that were left undone, these things that were not financed, those are things Liberian people have relied on. People have lived in misery, while the likes of your political godmother, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, were walking away with $3 million every budget here. And George, your justification is because your presidency was okay. And you want me, Anthony Cyr, to sit here. And you're telling me because it was budgeted, so nothing wrong with that. George, is how you look at things not being wrong, then I will allow you to live with that. We are where we are today because of this legalized corruption. And that is the core of my argument. And that's why I picked up the Vice President 2016-2017 budget. And I saw this same behavior. And yet, you and those who want him to be president don't want anybody to raise these things and ask him questions. And you telling me he's Mr. Clean? Mr. Clean could not give us the report of his expenditure. You said I should go and find it. George, we can't build a Liberia like that. That because I'm part of the party, I will not say or explain its misgiving, its inactions that affected a lot of people. Boakai lived the best of life as vice president. And you said because your vice president was good. Yes, maybe it was good to George Lobbo and the VP. He's Mr. Clean. But there are some people, his administration life is supposed to touch their life. Those people were left languaging. Government in the past did that. That is what the Unity Party did. That is what this government is doing. I will end with this, George.
Okay, at least.
A young soldier called Thomas Sankara. He didn't have much education. He was just a soldier. He came to power, George, and he turned lives around in Burkina Faso. I would think you are a student of history. I'm listening to you. So you know that history. If you compare what Sankara did within the few years he led, can you compare it with Ellen Johnson Sirleaf? And will you grade him the grade you are giving him now? John Magufuli, he didn't rule Tanzania for 12 years. Tanzania became a middle-income country. Massive infrastructure, including an airline. Your brother, you think your Joshua is your niece, he gave her airplane cake. And you will talk about that. I will talk about that. I will join you to even prosecute him on the issues. That was a laughing stock. And you think Joseph Yuman Boakai, because all the money was budgeted, was okay. I appreciate you coming, young brother. I know it was heated from the beginning, but again, those who listen to us will be the judge. Absolutely. Whether or not I'm on the side of the Liberian people, or whether or not I was biased in your own words to the VP. If people do not want us to hold the leaders accountable, that's fine. This is a man you classify as a man of judgment. But we're seeing his judgment. He said nothing about Mo Ali. I'm sorry we put you in this situation that you can't handle. I will leave it there. I will leave it there. So, folks, thank you, George. Thank you. Stay in touch. No, this is my show. I'm ending my show. You have your time to conclude.
Don't do that.
I did not interrupt you, George. You will not do that. I gave you enough time to conclude. I got the last word. All right, folks, thank you. This is how we will end the show. Again, there was about us looking at the budget. We did that. We apologize. We couldn't take calls. We couldn't read your comment. I wanted to have enough time to engage George Lobbo and also give him enough time to explain. Thank you for understanding that we have to do it that way. The song, "We Are All Liberian," is taking us home. If we are all Liberians, some people should not get too much money and then some people get less. That is not fair. This song is taking us home. Bye-bye, folks.
We are Liberian. Liberia is our home. Liberian people. Unity, all we want. Liberia, unity, all we want. Liberia,